Do you really think that the market's going to double again in the next 5 years? After the last 15 years, it's done about 8 times what it's done. The time can be your best friend or it can be your most evil enemy. What are you going to do with the time right now? Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. This show is for you, those that work so hard for your money, and you're now ready for your money to start working harder for you today. You want to become work optional, where you work because you want to, not because you have to, because you've got enough passive income to pay your bills and live the life that you love with those you love. But guys, it's not just about getting rich, is it? It's about living a rich life, because as you are blessed financially, as you create greater and greater wealth in your life, you also have a greater responsibility to create that ripple effect through the lives of others. Thank you for allowing me to do so today, because that's why I'm here, to create that ripple effect in your life so that your life can be richer and better. And it's not just about you, but creating a legacy that lasts generations beyond you. So thank you for tuning in today. Hey guys, as a reminder, if you haven't done so, here's a cool thing you can do. If you're on social media like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it might be, you can actually follow us at Money Ripples. Everything is branded at Money Ripples. Follow us there. We got great little short bits and tidbits you got there. And we even advertise our podcast and other videos that we do on our main Money Ripples YouTube channel. So check that out now. Okay, guys. So I want to talk about something that's fascinating, because I had a client that I've been talking to over the last month. We actually had a couple little short calls together. This is a client that hired us back in 2019. And in fact, he's even been on the podcast a couple years ago and gave us an update there too, and talked about the things that he learned and did, because, he works in an industry that you can never really count on. Granted, it's a great industry that he works in, but it's an industry that during COVID shut down. And then 2023, with all these different strikes and things going on, it shut down for about half of the year. And the one thing that he noticed was that he was so grateful he had cash flow coming in, because he was making about $3,500 a month of cash flow. Not going to make him rich by any way, shape, or form, but allowed his savings to stretch much longer, because he was able to pay for his necessary bills and then some. And having enough savings just meant he could go on for months and months and months, where most people in the industry would be scrambling to find work whenever they could, right? Or trying to do whatever they could to make ends meet. They'd be stressed out. And he didn't have to be that way. And here's what was fascinating is I recalled that there was another person I had actually spoken with that same year in 2019. Now, this woman, she was single, 55 years old. She was a health coach down in Arizona, and she'd reached out and she said, "Hey, Chris, I've got $250,000 in the stock market in mutual funds and whatnot. I met with a financial advisor and I'm trying to see if I can retire in 10 years. And it sounds like it's going to be really tough." And I said, "Well, how much do you need per month? Like, how much cash flow, how much passive income or whatever would you need per month to be able to live? Especially if you want to live your ideal life." And she said, "Chris, you know what my ideal would be? My ideal would be to work as a health coach in the early morning hours and then have the rest of the day free to do whatever I want." She's like, "I still want to do health coaching. I love it." Basically, she wanted to become work optional, right? Where she could keep working or not keep working. So she said, "If I get $2,000 a month, I'm okay." I said, "Awesome." And I said, "Well, if you've got $250,000 and you want to live on $2,000 a month, you got to get that 250,000 up to about $1 million in your mutual fund. At least if you're going to go off of good advice from a financial advisor. And that's not even including inflation, unfortunately. Obviously, you might want more than 2,000 a month in 10 years when you're trying to retire." She said, "Well, that's probably true. I might need 3,000, maybe 4,000 a month by then." I'm like, "You might." Well, here's the thing. I'm like, even today, if you were to try to retire, to have 2,000 a month after you pay taxes from your mutual funds and your IRAs and 401ks, because there's no real tax benefits in those things at all. I said you would have to have $1 million, because you're supposed to live on 3%. Well, 3% of $1 million is 30,000 a year. After you pay taxes, you might walk away with maybe 24,000 a year, which is $2,000 a month. She said, "Yeah, that sounds about right." I said, "Good luck quadrupling your money in 10 years. I'm like, "Could it happen? Yes. Is it likely? No." Just so you know, and I'm going to get to this too, what the market did from 2019 till now, because now it's been 5 years later. We're halfway through to that point where she had that goal. Anyways, I just told her, I said, "Listen, you want $2,000 a month. let me go with this scenario instead. Instead of going the traditional financial advisor route, what if you actually earned, say, just 10% a year on your money that generated income at 10% a year? Did you know you could retire in the next year? It's like, wait, what do you mean? I said, do the math. $250,000. If you have that 250,000, and instead of just leaving the stock market, because you have to only pull off 3%, because right now people are living longer, inflation's higher than it used to be when they created the dumb 4% rule back in 1976. It's a lot different world nowadays, right? So as a result, 3% is the most you'd want to pull out in retirement age. And by the way, for those of you in your 30s, maybe 40s, you should have a 2% rule instead if you're trying to use mutual funds to get you there, stocks and mutual funds and whatnot. So anyways, I said, yeah, 3%. So if you want to have 20,000 a year, ultimately in the mutual fund game, yeah, it's $1 million, making 30,000 a year, pay taxes. You might walk away with 2,000 a month after taxes are paid. But if you made 10% a year on your 250,000, what do you make? She said, well, I'm making 25,000 a year. I'm like, right, which is about $2,000 a month, just over, isn't it? She said, yeah. I'm like, you could actually do that. There are actually investments right now paying that, and some even paying more than that. And I'm like, I can't give you any guarantees, but you could actually be financially independent this year. And the crazy thing is, she's like, Chris, please tell me you're not lying right now. Please tell me that's not too good to be true. What she's really saying is, really? That's possible? And it's a good point, because I was in the same mindset that she was in. I was a financial advisor, trained, drinking the same freaking Kool-Aid I was teaching all my clients, which is you got to really save and save and save a lot more, about 33 times more than whatever you want to live on per year, right? And that's a tough one. And then that doesn't even include taxes too. So for some people, it's like you got to save like 40 times or 50 times, than what you actually want per year, And and so she's like, is that really possible? I said, honestly, right now, I have several investments I'm doing that are making more than that. I'm trying to be conservative though by showing you 10%, because most of the deals, even today in today's market, are still usually at least 10% a year. And she's like, that's incredible. Oh my goodness. And just so you know, she would have been thrilled if she could do it in 10 years. She's like, if I could do it 10 years, that'd be great. But even the financial advisor doubts that we could quadruple my money in 10 years. And I said, yeah, I doubt it too. And she was like, well, that means I might be working till I'm 70. Yeah, you might be. But what if you didn't have to? What if it could actually be now? And this is something I tell you guys all the time, is that it could be easier than you actually realize, that it could actually be faster. It's not get rich quick by any way, shape, or form. No way. But definitely a lot easier than using the traditional path, which 99% of people aren't ever really able to achieve. About a week later, I follow up with her and I said, hey, are we doing this or what? And she said, well, over the weekend, I was talking with my friends. And when she said that, I knew exactly where this is going. She's like, I was talking with my friends. And as we were talking about it, they said, you know what? No, you should just stick with the stock market. Stick with what you know. Stick with the normal. And I said, you realize that the normal doesn't work, right? You realize that 99% of people aren't able to comfortably retire doing these traditional financial plans, right? That's why they need Social Security when they're in their 60s. She's like, I just can't do it. It's so fascinating to see the contrast in their lives. I went to the stock market. Now, I'm not saying she got these returns, because she might have got less depending on what kind of funds she picked and what the performance was. But even let's just say that 250,000 was in the S&P 500. I went back. I said, let's look over this 5 years from 2019 to now 2024. The market did just about double, right? Just about double from where it was in 2019, depending on which month you're looking at. Well, that's not too shabby. That means her 250,000 might be worth maybe 450,000 today. Well, that's not too shabby, is it? Right? I mean, I keep saying shabby, but it's true. It's not too bad considering that her money still grew. But remember, if you pull off 3% on $400,000, that's still only about 12,000 a year. That's about half of what she wanted. And that's before she pays taxes. So really, she still needs to get it at least more than double. And remember, she's at 5 years in. She's halfway to that 10-year goal. She's hoping and praying to do it. The question is this: do you really think that the market's going to double again in the next 5 years? After the last 15 years, it's done about 8 times what it's done. That's questionable, isn't it? When I contrast that with my client here, right? We're talking with him, and he wasn't just impressed about the cash flow. That was good too, right? I mean, he had actually $250,000 he started with. He said, Chris, I started with $250,000 and I've been running the numbers and I'm pretty blown away, because now I'm about $3,500 a month, but my net worth, if you include my house now, is over $1 million, about 1.1 million. Now, if I took that out, right, if I took out the net worth of the house, his rental properties, he just bought rental properties. He didn't do any lending or any other partnerships. He just did pure rentals. He now owns 10 rental properties with that quarter million that he had and some of that money being reinvested from the cash flow over the last 5 years. So now he has 10 rental properties, two of which underperformed to where we could probably sell those off later this year and probably double the cash flow of what he's earning right now, even in the current environment that we're in. So anyways, we could probably get him over 4,000 a month is what I'm trying to say here. But right now, he still has about $665,000 of equity in these properties. Equity. So that 250,000 became 660,000. But the main difference is it's not that he's making, $1,000 a month he's got to pay taxes on, like would be in her case. Instead, he's making about $3,500 a month that has tax advantages because of depreciation. So he gets to keep most of his money. Same money, 5 years later, very different. And I know I've been guilty of this on this show because I talk about like short-term results a lot of times, right? Like what can you do the next year and things like that. But think of that other woman. What if she had done the same thing? What if she actually took that money and got that 2,000 a month, but she's going to keep working anyways as a health coach, and she kept reinvesting that money to buy a property about every year or so, right? And or just go and invest it somewhere else to generate more returns. It's not too unlikely that if she compounded her income, that she could be well over $3,000 a month today herself. Definitely not far-fetched from the different options that are available to her. So think about that. She could have been not just over 1,000, but over 3,000 a month, do it with the same money. Guys, it's not about how much money you have. It's about what you can do with that money. It's how you can get that money working harder for you so you don't have to work so hard for it. Otherwise, you're going to be working years and years, potentially decades longer than you would otherwise. Is that what you really want to do? Now, this brings up a good point because it's not just about the returns you make, guys, but there's the thing that I'm going to really title this is that you can profit off procrastination, right? I would say most people out there will procrastinate. Most people will say, that sounds nice, but I'm going to stay in my little box, my little world, and stay with what I know and not venture outside of it. And I get it. Getting outside that box is scary. It feels risky. It was for me. Imagine being someone like me where I lost just about everything in that 2008, 2009 recession. I had to hit the reset button. I didn't file for bankruptcy, but I had to dig out of $1 million debt hole. And a lot of it was real estate related too, because I had to figure out how to get out from underneath properties. I even foreclosed on my own house. Could you imagine how scary it was for me to do my first rental property? Even if it had training wheels on it. And by the way, I'm being metaphorical here. My training wheels, I mean like buying a turnkey real estate property where somebody helped me find the property, helped me buy it, and they property manage it for me. That was a big leap of faith for me. But once I did it, guess what I did? I bought another one and then another one and another one, right? I just kept buying them. And then I was even investing in other investments too. Like you've seen me talk about on my podcast last week, right? Some of my favorite investments that I have now, I started diversifying and broadening that horizon. But it started with one investment. And the problem is that most people, because they get so locked into their little box, they don't want to venture outside of it. And if they happen to venture outside, they usually do it off an emotional thing, not a real logical thing. They go off the emotions. They're like, ooh, if I could get rich doing this thing, and they become gamblers, not investors. And then they go and they buy, maybe that crypto, little deal that came out that ended up being a Ponzi scheme, right? Or they end up going to do some business venture that went south because they didn't know what they were doing. They were just trying to, play their luck. That's not how you invest, guys. Investors don't play luck. They do not take high risk to create high returns because that's false. That's outside. That's violating all principles of wealth right there by thinking that higher risk or higher chance of loss creates a higher chance of winning. It doesn't work that way, guys. 90% chance of losing does not equal to a 90% chance of winning. It's a 10% chance of winning. You want the 90% chance of winning or more so that you can actually ensure that you have your money, you keep it, and you make more on top of it. That is the real way to create wealth. That is the conservative, safe way to do it. Not gambling in the stock markets, not gambling in mutual funds with investment advisors that don't even know what they're doing. That's ridiculous. And I'm here to tell you guys that procrastination. Now, what if she came back 5 years later? That would be great. And I've had several people say, even I did when I did an interview recently, they said, man, I wish I met you 20 years ago. I said, that's a heck of a lot better than meeting me 20 years in the future. Meeting me in the 2044, isn't it? It's like all you have is right now. Yes, it would have been better if, hindsight 2020, you found me 20 years ago. But 20 years ago, I was a crappy financial advisor. I wouldn't have listened to my advice if I were you. Okay. So that point is moot, right? But all you have is today. The best thing you can do, if you couldn't have done it back then, is do it right now. What can you do right now to change your life? Because every year counts. Every year. Just like that, I shared that one client that I've had where he had that property in California. He did not want to sell it. He was so locked in on trying to pay off that mortgage in 6 years, and then he would have 2,400 a month of cash flow. But there's 700 grand of equity sitting in it. It took him 2 years before he was finally convinced that he was going to sell off that property. By the way, he didn't even bother trying to do a cash out refinance where you could actually get the same mortgage payment at a low interest rate and get cash out at the same time and made more money than that. No, he had to do what he just felt comfortable doing, which is he eventually sold off their beloved rental property and bought now 7 more properties that cash flow him over $8,000 a month. The guys, he makes over $100,000 a year from something he was hoping to make 2,400 bucks a month on next year. By the way, he also hired us 5 years ago, but it took him until 3 years ago before he finally had the gumption and the wherewithal to finally say, I'm going to sell a property and go buy more. And he's done it a great job, right? That's the difference, guys. Timing's everything. But I'll tell you, if he would have done it earlier, he probably would have had at least 120,000. He'd probably be at 10,000 a month, not 8,000 a month, had he done it 2 years prior. Again, hindsight 2020, guys. It always is. But that's the thing is that all you have is right now. Procrastinating only costs you money. You're worried about what kind of returns you might be able to make in the stock market. I would worry about what kind of returns would you lose in the stock market? What would happen if the market tanked 20, 25%? Because the market loves to go down fast, but recover slowly. It doesn't go up fast. It drops fast, then recovers slowly. Look at the history of the stock market. You'll see that to be true. This is what happened in Y2K. In the year 2000, I had clients that said, man, I had money that I put 100 grand in the year 2000. It's now 2010. I haven't made my money back. You know when they started saying they made their money back? 2015. Even though the stock market recovered by 2013 at that same point, it still took 13 years for the market to make it back to that year 2000 high. But the problem is because they had costs and everything else coming out, it took them another 2 years before the market was going up enough to break even. So I didn't hear people say until about 2014 or 2015, I finally got my money back, only to know that they lost to inflation where it's probably worth maybe, if they're lucky, half that money. You get my point here? You see that the only thing you have right now is now, and it's your time. The time can be your best friend or it can be your most evil enemy. What are you going to do with the time right now? Now, how do you profit on procrastination? It's not just taking the opportunity, it's taking advantage of other people that procrastinate. And when I say take advantage of other people, I don't mean you literally screw people over, right? I mean, take advantage by doing things that people that procrastinate won't do now. Let me show you something here. Can I show you something really quick? Because this is what's kind of crazy. This right here is the chart of the S&P 500 from March of 2009 until August, the 1st of August of 2024. 15 years and 5 months. Okay. Now, if you look at this chart, you'll say, wow, the stock market's done awesome. In fact, if I measure it from back here, right there in March, you'll see that the open, March 2009, the open was 729 is where the open was, right? Now, if I put that in a compound interest calculator, 729 is now 5446. Just so you know, that's like 8 times. That's pretty dang good in 15 years, isn't it? Well, if I put in 729, and even if that's 12% for 15 years, and let's put 5 months, this is just a calculator, compound interest calculator at calculator.net. And notice the 12%, it's way lower. Watch when I put 14%. Boom. That means it's averaged 14% a year in the last 15 years. I just had somebody reach out to me recently. He'd actually talked to me, funny enough, 3 years ago. 3 years ago, and he put me off. He says, you know what, maybe in 2022. He finally reached out in 2024. And he said, we might be ready now. Let me get my wife involved because he was wanting to make sure that she was on board, which I completely agree with. Well, he says, yeah, well, I was debating about using this investment advisor. We have $740,000 in the stock market right now. Our current advisor charges us 1.36%. He's like, Chris, how much is that? I said, that's almost $10,000 a year that you're paying him. I said, he'll actually pay us you'll pay us less over just the first few years than you'll pay this advisor for doing literally nothing that you could that you could actually do on your own. He's like, well, one investment advisor offered 1%. I said, that's the standard. That's still $7,400 a year every year. If you happen to make money, then they get paid more. But if you lose money, even when you lose, they still get paid. If you go down to $600,000, they still make $6,000 a year even after you lost money. So you lose money twice in that case. That's ridiculous, right? And so they said, well, yeah, well, this advisor, he's helped our friends. And in the last 15 years, they've done a 15% average return. And I laughed. I said, well, so did everybody else. Because guess what? Right here, 14%, right? I said, he basically did the same thing everybody else did. Because, and they probably may or may not have got 15%, and they might have just rounded up. But still, to say they made 15% in the last 15 years, it's like, duh, everybody did. Here's the difference, though, guys, is that watch this one thing. This is where I've often quoted Ben Stein when his dad told him, who's a Harvard economist, saying that figures don't lie, but liars figure. Watch. What if I just go to August of 2009? See, the market started to recover a little bit, right? August 2009, the opening was 990. Okay, so it went from down the 700s up to 990. That's a big jump in just a matter of months. Kind of like what we've seen recently, right? Watch what happens if I put 990 in here and I leave it at 14%, but I take off the 5 months because now it's 0 months. Watch. Well, the stock market's not at 7,000, is it? Let me knock down just 2%. Voila, almost exactly where we are right now in the stock market at 5,400. And this is as of August 1st, right? Guys, think about this. Just by skewing it a few more months, I could raise or lower it like 2%. Do you think financial advisors like to do that too? And here's the thing, guys, let's be honest, like that's just 12%. The thing is, you could do that in real estate and possibly even make more depending on the kinds of real estate deals that you're in. But again, even if you did make the same returns, the difference is this. And this is the big thing, because if you made this money in the market, congratulations. This is awesome. But here's the thing you got to understand. Let me zoom out of this view from the 15-year view. Watch this. Now we start going back in time. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. 2000s, right? We had the 2000s were pretty miserable. You can see there, 2000. Got there in March, got it to a high, took it till about 2013. It almost got there in 2007. Went until about 2013. You finally got back to where you were again. But look again, like now it's just gone gangbusters these last 15 years. The average has been closer to about 8%. Well, if we've been 14%, what do you think the return will have to be for the next 15 years for a 30-year average to be still right around 7 to 8%, which is typical? Well, if we're at 14%, guys, that means it's going to be a pretty darn low number for the next 15 years to get back into balance. This is something I've measured even before. Like you go back to the 90s. If I go to the 90s, see, like it was roaring. They call it the roaring 90s for a reason. Like it roared, it boomed during that period of time. It was awesome. You can see how that just took off. I mean, we were down, the S&P was down around, 400 points. In 2000, it got up to more than triple that in just like 5 years, guys. 5 years. That was it. So that's my point, is that it's always, you got to have the long-term perspective. You got to see what's happening. If you could go back in time, if you were like somebody in the year 2000, would you tell them, hey, you know what? This might be the time to take out your gains and invest in something else. You know what boomed during this period of time, during Y2K and afterwards? Real estate did. Real estate started booming when the stock market wasn't. Money moved. Now, the stock market has been booming for 15 years. Understand that typically the stock market goes about 4 or 5 years up, 2 years down, right? Even if I'm being more conservative, and I mean conservative meaning like I'm talking more than what it normally is, 5 years up, 2 years down. That means in a 15-year period, you should have 6 years going down. Yet we've only had one. That was 2022. That's it. You don't think we're overdue? So my advice to you is, if you're looking at procrastinators around the world, right? There's a lot of procrastinators that think that there should be some sort of, that the market should just keep going up, right? I talked to some people in their 20s and 30s, and they think the market will keep going up. I talked to a guy that's literally like, he's 28 years old, made great money in the market, but yet he still thinks the market goes up. Because why? Because it's been going up ever since he was like in freaking junior high. The sad thing is, I was in the financial advisor world when he was in kindergarten. The guy was barely stopped peeing his pants, and he's saying, like, he's questioning me on whether or not I'm really looking at the market appropriately. No, I know what the market does. I traded stocks and options. I was all in on the market. I bought the Kool-Aid, and yet it was still a gamble. It was still a big, big gamble. So guys, I'm not giving you advice to sell off right now. I'm just saying the best time to sell is when nobody wants to sell, is when everybody's telling you to buy. That's the best time to sell. That's why I made money on Bitcoin. And then you guys know I'm not a big Bitcoin fan, but I saw the opportunity. When it comes to the stock market, I don't buy when the stock market's at all-time highs. I buy after a market crash. That's the time to buy. By the way, my wife actually bought in 2009 when she bought in the stock market. She's like, market does awesome. Well, yeah, she timed it perfectly. She bought in at the exact right time. But she didn't buy at the height. She bought it when everybody else was saying the stock market is horrible. You're not hearing that right now. You're hearing the opposite, right? You're hearing the stock market is really the place to be. Is it though? Is it the place to be? Because if you ride the waves like everybody else, you will find that you won't have nearly as much money in the end. Because imagine what would happen if your money got to the point where you maybe only saw like a average of 3% rate of return in the next 15 years. What if it did do that? Would you be thrilled? Would you say, I could have kept my money in the bank and made more money, right? But what if you could lock in your gains now? Say, great, I've got these gains, these great gains. Let's capitalize on it and then use that money to move over somewhere else where I know I have some more certainty. I've got a real asset backing up and it pays me income. You could be taking the best advantage of a market high right now if you're one of those few people that reads the writing on the wall and says, you know what? I can tell the AI tech boom is going crazy right now. People are buying when people are running up credit cards right now. There's things like that happening. We're seeing issues with the feds, and they're talking about maybe lowering rates, but not in a good way because maybe the economy's slowing down because unemployment's going up too. Guys, I can guarantee this, and this is why the stock market even had a little bit of a dip here in early August, was because of this very reason. They're saying, wait, rates coming down could also mean a bad thing. It could mean that we're actually in trouble and manufacturing's down and unemployment's going up and people's credit card balances are running up while their savings are depleted. That's a problem, guys, because when people can't spend money, they don't invest in those companies that drive those stock market prices. And when they don't start reporting good earnings, you don't make money either. And you're just helpless. You're a victim, but not a helpless victim. You're helpless to the situation, but you're a willing victim. You're a victim that chose to be in that place because you thought that's where you should be because you want to stay in that little box. It's time to break outside the box. If you want better results in your life, you got to do something better than what you've been doing. That's the key. And even if you think you've been doing amazing, great, you've made a lot of money in the stock market. That doesn't last forever, does it? Markets go up and markets go down. It's all about timing. And sadly, it's about luck. And usually the smartest people get out when everybody else thinks they're crazy. That is the time when you have the best opportunity to make it when you sell at a high, not sell at a low, which is what most average Americans do. Don't be average. Don't be ordinary. Be extraordinary by doing something different. Again, I'd say if you want to see how much passive income you can create with the monies you have right now, go to moneyripples.com, try out that passive income calculator just to see what it is. It's at least $15,000. We need to be talking. We need to see what we can do to actually really get your income up from there. Guys, let us know how we can support you, but think of this. What can you actually be doing right now to take advantage of other people's procrastination, where it's not you procrastinating, but it's them? Go and make a wonderful and prosperous week so you can make it a prosperous life. See you later.